Welcome everybody to week 4 of the 3dsMax tutorial series of season 1. So I'm venturing into uncharted territory, guys. My stress level 0 shirts are in the wash. A lot of confusion last week. At the end, basically what I decided to do was to go really fast through the remainder of the process. I'm going to pick up where I left off, right at the point where I said, oh, I'm going to go faster through the rest of this, so don't bother about following along. That was the moment that I did that. I'm picking up after the point of right after lining the camera up is where we're picking up. So if you weren't able to follow along, that's fine. You weren't expected to. I just wanted to finish it up so you guys kind of saw where it fit into the process. Hopefully you guys had a chance to practice aligning a camera a little bit. I tweeted out the assets and I also had the link to them. I want you guys to practice some of your own and create some and try some various scenarios, because it's a very good skill to be able to line that camera up efficiently. So if you see here, I've got 2 gray balls placed in the scene for the testers to test our lighting. We've got the scene roughly modeled, just super rough, just wall, floor. And I've got the backgrounds already in there and the camera's lined up. We need 2 light sources we're working today. Basically, the lighting in 3dsMax for an outdoor scene is comprised of 3 things. You've got your sun, which you place in the scene, and that automatically adds a sky environment. You have the projection map for the geometry that you model in your scene. And then you have the spherical environment, which is like the sky kind of like dome that you make to go for the stuff that's really far away. We're going to talk about the first 2 of those today. And so the first thing I'm going to do is pull up V-Ray Sun. Click on Lights and switch this over to V-Ray. And in there you'll find the V-Ray Sun. It's kind of backwards to what you'd think it would. You click at where the sun is first, and then you drag over to a point for it to be. And it always comes out flat first. And it's going to prompt you to automatically add a V-Ray sky environment map. Say yes. And then go over to our side viewport here, hit W for move, and move it upwards. Now when I did this shot, I think it was about 3 p.m., 3:30 p.m. You can see down the street that the sun was up about, that trajectory and from that direction. So we're gonna match that in this scene, put it up, and it should be, that's about right there. And then also later on from the shadows, you'll be able to tell. You want to look at the shadows from the cars in the scene, from the walls, and make sure that our shadows are the same in this scene to make sure your sun is lined up. And so we have two sets of controls. One is if we click on the sun right here, and click over on the modify panel, it'll allow us to modify our sun. I control a lot of these in the first episode in order to create an overcast day. By default, it's pretty much well set up for direct sunlight. So I'm not going to change anything right now, but if you want to look back to the first episode, you'll see kind of how I played with those to create an overcast day out of this. And then the second bit of controls is for the sky map. So over in our effects and environments, our environment and effects, you see the V-Ray skies there. Now in order to edit anything that's in a material slot, like that's a map slot or a material slot, we hit M, which pulls up a material window, and we need to drag it over and create an instance of it over in our material editor. You have 2 choices, instance or copy. Instance means anything you change over here will be changed over there. Copy means you have 2 unique copies of it. So now that we have it over there, double click on it. First thing we're going to do is specify sun node. So click over on the sun node, specify it, boom. We got V-Ray Sun there. Now it knows for the sky, for at least making that procedural sky dome, it knows that's where the sun is. Once we put the sun in that scene, we can take a look here. We hit render, but it's just going to look like a bunch of crap. That is because a few things are missing. First, we have to hit 8. Now you see right here under environment map, the V-Ray sky, that's where when it prompted us earlier, if we wanted to add one by just automatically, it's there. If you happen to hit no, you could add one manually. The first thing we need to add into the scene is an exposure control. Click on this, go to V-Ray exposure control. The scene's got the sun with a defined amount of illumination, and now this is giving you controls to define how to control that exposure. So take this, I like to switch it over. You can do it in any 3 of these modes. I like to switch it over to from EV. And then first thing I always do is go to temperature and match this temperature to the temperature for my camera. Now when I shot it, it was 6,000. So put that on there, I'll adjust the white balance. Now we could hit render again, and it's exposed a little better, but still doesn't look right. A big thing to do first is turn on Indirect Illumination. Now, remember what that photo just looked like when we rendered it out. Go over to Indirect Illumination and just simply click on. And then under a radiance map, I like to, when I'm working on just like preview renders, I like to work on low or very low, so it renders pretty quick. Third setting to make sure you have, under V-Ray, color mapping, make sure this is set to exponential. We'll work with that. That makes it, that controls how it falls off when things clip. Linear will let things clip, exponential will kind of roll it off as it gets to hotter exposures. What indirect illumination is before we just had the sun. We had a single light source. It was coming down and it was creating, so shadows were completely black, and things that were lit were lit normally at a single light source. Basically, if you think of the moon doesn't have much indirect illumination, basically. You think of space, it's like everything's always lit from one side. Your spaceship is like harsh on one side and black on the other side. But the real world's not like that. Light bounces in the real world. Light comes from the sun, it goes and hits the ground, and it bounces up, it hits the walls, it bounces around. And a big thing that light bounces around is the sky. The sky is, the blue sky basically is adding this kind of blue ambient light throughout the entire scene. But basically that's what you're seeing now. So it's got the blue shadows there, and we have the sun coming in. The sky looks overexposed, but it's not quite overexposed. Right now you can see that it's sitting at 97, 97, 98, so it's right at the top of white, which is pretty much where we want it. If we want to bring it into range and look at it a little bit more, we can go into our exposure control and change our exposure value to, let's just do 2 right now, just so you get a really good look at it. Hit render. Okay, that's a little underexposed, but you can see the sky now. You can see how it's kind of putting the sky with the ozone down there, and you can see it pretty much how it's a pretty much natural looking sky. We're going to turn the exposure up a little bit again to match our day. We're gonna basically change those balls into the chrome ball and the gray ball. You'll notice they're both already gray by default, but let's make a material anyways. V-Ray material. V-Ray material is like your basic default kind of like Lego equivalent of materials. You can build anything out of this. This is like your default material. V-Ray, all right, so diffuse, we're gonna have that at 50%. You can see right now you can go all the way to black, you can go all the way to white. We're gonna have it right at 50, which is right in the middle there, boom. Okay, and no reflectivity. Reflectivity is black, so that's 0 reflectivity. And we're gonna take that material, always remember to name it, so gray ball. We're going to create another V-Ray material. However, this time we're going to make it 100% reflective. So we're going to take this whiteness, turn it all the way to 100%, and now it's like a perfect mirror, impossibly perfect mirror. Take that material, name it mirror ball. It's important to get in the habit of naming things and just having good file structure, keeping it organized. Good. Select the ball, select the material, hit A. So you notice now, one ball is reflective, one ball is gray. The reason why we do one gray ball and one reflective ball is that's like basically the 2 indicators we need to test lighting in the scene. The reflective ball shows us, obviously the reflections of 360 degrees, everything the scene's reflecting around, so we can see how light's functioning. And then the gray ball shows us what direction lighting's coming from, as well as the intensities of those lighting. We can see that, okay, it's lighting's hot from over here, and you can also see on the bottom, it seems flat at first, but when you look at it really closely, you can see it's dark on the bottom where it's getting shadows from the ground. On the sides there, it's got a little bit of extra gray there because it's light bouncing from the ground up to it, and so basically lets us gauge the lighting. It's very important when doing like indoor lighting scenes to be able to measure the intensities of the sources of all the light around it. Now we're gonna make a third material, the most important of the materials. Go to material, V-Ray, and V-Ray material. And this material is going to be, double click on it, this material is going to be our projection map. So what's different about this material is we're going to put a map in the diffuse slot. The diffuse slot, basically your materials when you're making them are comprised of 3 elements. You get diffuse, reflect, and refraction. Those are the 3 primary ways light is. Diffuse is basically, it's the dull light that bounces off. This object has very little reflectivity. It's basically, to make this material, it'd be a yellow, kind of off yellow, dull yellow. Diffuse, you'd put yellow in there and that would make it. And then you do a little bit of reflectivity because everything's got just a little bit of reflectivity, and that'd pretty much make it. So diffuse is basically the base color of that object. But for this, instead of making it one solid color, we're going to click in this little gray box next to diffuse, and that's going to allow us to put camera map per pixel in there. And what this is going to do, this is a nifty little trick, which allows us to turn our camera into, think of like a projector in real life, like a video projector. So we double click on that, we open it, we have just a few simple inputs. Number 1, camera. Now when you read camera there, think projector. It's what do you want to be the projector? Let's make a projector on your environment. And the environment becomes the screen for it, basically. We're going to use our main camera here that we've lined up to the scene. Click on that, and so you got camera 001 in there. And then the next thing is what do you want to project onto the environment, which is texture. Click on that. We're going to project a bitmap, and that bitmap is going to be the same background that we loaded up and aligned the camera to in the scene. A few details for bitmap. You want to make sure it's on texture and explicit map channel is selected for the mapping technique. And you'll see that the background is now on there. Now the background, you'll notice is a little bit discolored up on the walls. That's because it's still being affected by the shadows. Let's render from a few different perspectives. Basically, there's a camera off to the side that's projecting onto there, and now we're looking at it from a different angle. So from a different angle, it looks all wonky because you can see that we didn't actually model the cars, we didn't all model the background, but for our intents and purposes right now, we don't actually have to do that. This is something you can play around with. If you model those cars in there, start putting stand-in boxes and kind of sculpting them in there, you'll start to really see how the more modeling you do, the more detail you get for that to reflect off of. Okay, so that's the basics of how a projection map works. Basically, if you think of it, and really I encourage you to like explore around, just kind of move that camera around and really like play with it a little bit and try to understand the fundamentals of what's going on here, because it's very important to understand what's going on. And basically what that allows us to do now, since we're projecting from the camera what that stuff looks like, and since we've modeled the geometry to put into 3D space, basically converting our 2D image, which we filmed with our camera, back into a 3D image, now our ball here, you'll notice that the mirror ball, it reflects properly this little gutter in the road. You can see it also, if you look very closely, it reflects the yellow dotted line properly where it's lined up. If you do a spherical environment, you'll never get that kind of detail. Now it's got the gutter off to the side. It looks the way it should. It's reflecting properly, and so that's essential for having anything that's got any sort of reflective quality moving around. Even if there's no reflective quality, you're still getting light from this environment, and that's why in the gray ball you can see the yellow coming from the road here. If we had a large colorful object here, it'd be much easier to see that there's the bounce light coming from it, but it's coming from there. For your homework, I want you to take these files, continue on, check my Twitter if you didn't get them last week, do last week's tutorial if you didn't do it last week, and continue on to this one, and basically get as far as getting the sun into the scene and getting the projection map into the scene. And really like, get in the habit of any single value that I tell you to put into something. Try doing it, try doubling it, try halving it, try like the exposure value here, try going up with it, down with it, the white balance here, try going up with it, down with it. Really try to, what I find to be the best way to figure out what actually each value is doing is to kind of try extremes. You know, try it all over the map, because if you just put in values, you'll never understand what's doing what and what comprises it. Because obviously the shots that you end up shooting are never going to be the same shots that I shoot. And so it's very important to know which slider controls what and see what things are doing in your scene and really understand the tools. So really play around with it and take your time with it and report back to me. And next week, we will go over spherical environments and putting them to the scene, and then we'll be pretty close to being done.